Yeah. Shit. So I went live and then a bunch of shit just popped up on my screen. So can someone roll the thing?
Are we actually live?
Are we?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Oh,
Hi, everybody.
Fuck.
Welcome to Game of Nerds.
welcome to Game of Nodes, a weekly podcast on the cosmos from independent validator teams. I think we get only more shambolic every week with our intros. There's only so much high quality rugging you can actually sort of do off the cuff, I think, is what I'm learning as we go into this 40-second episode. I don't want to open the show with trash talk, but by God, I'm going to. But I did notice there was that. I don't know if this is 100% the drama du jour, but the Prop 89 on the hub, which maybe is the drama du jour, about asking for community funds for doing videos, and they were like, "Oh, since July or June or something, we've done 11 videos." So I was like, 11 videos sounds like a holiday, bro.
I saw. I went and looked at them. They're really. I think I've seen a couple of those before. They're pretty nice.
To be fair, like their production quality is probably a bit higher.
It is. There's like green screens and shit, but they're only like 10 minutes long, like 14 minutes. So if we do 42 times 90 versus 16 videos times 10 minutes, I mean, we should be getting 1,000 an episode here.
Yeah. I mean, what's
what are we doing?
Well, I guess we're not validating the hub, number one.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Sure, so you validate the hub, don't you?
He does.
There you go. Let's see, big balls.
I voted yes. I voted yes.
Put in for some cash for us, bro.
Yeah, let's go.
Ooh, I could. Yeah, as a response to it. Hey, they got
number 90.
I mean, the thing is, though, is it's like, what is it? It's 300 Adam for monthly funding for a period of 6 months.
Is it 300 per total?
300, no, per month. So
what's 300 times 6? Somebody with maths.
1,800.
That wasn't too hard.
Yeah.
So that's what, $20,000?
Well, what is it? It's 962. Yeah,
Yeah,
17 grand.
17 grand. That's a lot of money for 11 videos.
Is it for 11 videos? Let's see.
Is that 11 more?
I don't know. But that's paying from the rears, right?
Yeah, but then I guess it depends. It depends who. Wait. So if you went to like an ad agency and were like, "Give me 11 videos," it would probably cost you about 20 grand, I reckon.
Yeah.
I would say probably even more than that.
I guess it depends what you want in them.
Yeah. I guess maybe that's why we're not worth 1,000 Adam per video.
Yeah. But then equally, if you were like, if you just like went to an independent like videographer or something, and you were like, I don't mind using stock footage to pad it out a bit, but like on these topics, I reckon you could do it for that. I wouldn't be too surprised anyway. But
you don't pay me shit for creating the podcast, so this is kind of bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, we're all just whatever. I mean, given to be fair, our StreamYard subscription on its own, okay, yeah, we obviously use some software behind the scenes. Definitely makes Game of Nodes a loss, I think, in the aggregate. Like, but by the time you add up all of the fiddling we have to do to make this work every week, plus the time, like I know we look really disorganized, but there is a little bit of extra. Anyway,
what are you talking about, man? Spending 1 single cent makes fucking Game of Nodes a loss.
We should call out the amount of effort being put into the spreadsheet this week. I saw at least 3 or 4 separate contributions by 3 or 4 members of this group, which is,
I think, as the bear gets deeper,
high water.
The spreadsheet gets more attention.
Maybe that's what it is.
My
to the bear.
Why bother maintaining your nodes? They're not making you money, but the spreadsheet is good procrastination rather than looking.
The
at
null
the
contributions were more or less just complaining about shit with comments.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just got complained at, and then one comment asked me why Null could not tag me
That's right.
So I'm like, number one,
was
what
it.
am I? Am I the Google tech support guy? And number two, you have just tagged me.
Why can't I fucking at Alex is what it says.
why can't I just do the thing you already did?
But when I comment and when I type at, you just don't come up.
Yeah, that's what the comment says. We get it.
It goes off of whatever. It's not important. Anyway, joking aside, I actually don't have a problem with Prop 89. I'd probably be like, I guess like from the being cynical, they're going to do it anyway. Why should you pay for it? That would
Were they asking for the 11 that they completed or 11 new ones? I think it was 11 completed, right? I kind of like what a novel idea to be paid after the work is complete. That's something maybe other projects could look at. not just throwing $2 million at somebody.
Who could you be referring to?
I don't know. Maybe there's other proposals we could refer to. But they did ask after they did 11 and they came back for it. So whatever, if there's value there, then great.
Well, to be fair to them, they went and they did the work, and they didn't like hire 30 people to try and do the work, and then and then find out that they were actually not a sustainable business venture.
I'll have to see if they shit talk everybody on Twitter, because I think that's kind of part of the funding process as well, right? The projects have to get out there and fucking
fucking go to bat.
You don't understand.
I actually so I've interacted with Cosmic Validators before. I think they're nice folks, and it's such a modest ask, in my opinion.
Yeah.
For what they're actually doing, they do engage on Twitter and everything. They're trying to like be a good positive influence on the ecosystem, and for the modest ask for how much effort they're probably putting into actually making them, I
think you're right.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably vote yes. I don't validate the hub, but if we did, probably vote yes.
It's really you're right.
I mean, maybe maybe that money will help them, become like a nice, good hub for news for the cosmos, and it might attract other people. Maybe it'll be worth it.
Well, the question is though whether I don't know how big are they a validator on the hub, because the flip side is that they probably could just pay for this from their commissions.
Right.
I think they're fairly small. Yeah, they are number 171 right now. So 4 above the bottom.
So, and there are a lot of YouTube personalities who validate, right? So is this opening the floodgate to some of those coming in and say, hey, because I agree. I mean, part of it is the validator is the revenue piece of that. Because I mean, you would think that their position is in line with whatever effort that's happening on the YouTube side, and if they're getting visibility out of it, it's creating delegations, and that should be the one that pays for it, right? Kind of similar how successful Game of Nodes is for the 4 of us.
I mean, it's wildly successful for generating delegations. I noticed we're already getting some comments in. Adam Baum has said, I think on the subject of, maybe that's about the time when I said I'd probably be a yes from me. Boo. Ben Davis says, but do we really want people to make a positive impact?
That
one really makes
fair
you
question.
think. That one really makes you think.
We should create a DAO around that one.
Soy2 Studios says, have you actually watched the videos? I have to be honest, no, because the thumbnails make me cringe.
What? It's still thumbnails.
I am a little bit like, thumbnails are not how to get me to watch a video, but look, yeah, right. But then like I see a video where it's just like the essence of like all this, whatever category theory or something with some guy with a beard, and I'm like, fucking yes, let's fucking go.
That's it.
So I realized that I'm deranged, but Rama says, hey, Rama's here. The prop identifies a tooling problem for funding content. What? Oh, you can tell that how badly I've read the thing then.
So on the, like, I don't know the quality of the content, but like, for each of those videos, they put out like a whole ass Medium article as well. It's like they put in a fair amount of effort. It's got to be researched and takes time to type and.
Right, but at the same time, at school, Noel, I recall I was not graded on the amount of effort I put in. I was graded on whether it was good or shit.
Yeah, but like, you know, the content is not bad.
Have you watched it?
I have actually watched it, yeah, because of the
Okay.
thumbnail.
We just look. At least we have a diversity of opinion on Game of Nodes for some very narrow definition of diversity of opinion. There you go. Soy2 Studio has asked actually in the comments, isn't this the whole point of the ICF delegations? Kind of seems like yes, actually.
That's actually a really good point. I'll take that.
So,
But to that end, ICF delegations don't currently exist yet. Like they're marketing them and we know they're coming, but they aren't here. So while they don't still exist, this is another method of funding. So, and I don't think there's an issue with having multiple forms of funding. I think that if you receive a delegation, you can still go for community funding, right? Like if I created a tool in Juno, I do have a delegation from Core One or whoever the entity is that does the delegations there. I don't think that that makes it mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I think they do explicitly say something actually as well about not wanting that they'll, if they get one, they'll give up t'other, if that makes sense.
Double dip.
But yeah, and then as always, there's a bunch of comments in there in the chat about it should come from a DAO. DAO's all the way down. It's DAO here, baby. Is Game of Nodes a DAO?
It's a cabal.
It's a cabal. It's an evil. DAO sounds nice. We are definitely evil all the way down. Game of Nodes.
It's a cabal.
Yeah, we're a DC, decentralized cabal. Oh, K? DK? How the fuck do you spell cabal?
Well,
I don't know.
What's the difference between a decentralized cabal and a DAO?
Is he frozen?
Is he frozen or was he just deep in thought?
That was both. Both.
Oh no, I missed that from the jitters. Fuck you, Elon. You're fucking up today, brother.
It's not the birds.
Nah, man, it's Elon. He's been a cunt. He's got the.
He has in fact been a cunt.
he's got the button on my internet connection. He's just like tapping it. He's like, fuck you. He's like got the wires going.
He probably watched last episode. He was like, "Oh, talk shit on live podcast, huh? All right, so we'll see what happens."
That's probably why it's never going to work for us if we try and do spaces. Because we'll just get blacklisted or shadow banned or whatever the fuck you call it for Twitter.
Immediately
like,
shadow banned.
Immediately.
Game of fuckheads more like. Let's see if they. We were trying not to swear and get demonetized. Even though we're never, ever, ever going to make it 90 minutes without demonetizing ourselves, number one. And number two, we don't even have ads enabled to my understanding of how that works on YouTube anyway.
It doesn't
even
matter.
So, I was trying not to swear.
We can't be monetized because of all of our other videos. You'd have to go and sanitize everything and it would just ruin the fucking channel.
No, isn't it on a case-by-case basis?
No, if your channel's like fucking up, you have to go back and fix all the other shit.
Really?
Or delete pages. Yeah, you can't.
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
You can say fuck on YouTube and you don't have to then go back and edit out the word fuck from every YouTube video. That's ridiculous.
You just have to go on a PR path. I'm sorry to everyone for saying the dirty F word.
I'm really sorry. We've realized mistakes have been made on Game of Nodes. The word fuck has been said on several occasions.
Game of Nodes cares.
Mistakes have been made, but not by me.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Shit.
There you go.
Says, good content is its own reward. Thanks, Adam. We reward ourselves every day.
Let us know when we get there, Adam, and we'll we take a very iterative approach. This is a long social game / performance art piece, one episode at a time, for future archaeologists of the internet to uncover and be like, what were people doing, thinking, smelling at the time of the great interchain explosion? They'll watch 5 episodes and be like, yeah, actually, we'll just make something up.
Yeah, it's better in the future.
There's probably primary material in here somewhere. But let's just say that everybody was anxious.
That's what it was.
That they were making money, and then sometimes they were losing money. There we go. Okay.
Yeah, let's go watch the Cosmic Validator show instead.
Yeah.
I could see a
bullish on
Monty
this Cosmic
Python
Validator
skit
show.
Oh shit.
Okay, so
I
guys,
think that what a lot of people are struggling with here is that, you know,
Oh my goodness. The production quality is just amazing. Is that Elon? Is that Elon popping in live stream on the on your internet?
No, you know when you go to a YouTube channel, I've got these fucking bullshit like automatic videos that just when you go to, you know, it's fucking annoying. Yep. So has anyone watched?
So we need
has anyone?
Is that what you're saying?
Have any of you? Shut up. You haven't done anything like in the actual channel descriptions and anything. I keep saying let us in there so we can bastardize it. But
I keep saying that's not how YouTube accounts work.
Just give us your password, bro.
Oh yeah, what's the worst that could happen? We'll just give you the company Gmail password. That's a great idea.
So anyway, has anyone watched? Because I found this fascinating. Has anyone watched the FTX collapse hearing on the Wall Street Journal YouTube channel for 4 hours?
Yes.
It was
that seems like very nerdy, even by your standards.
With
you mean
with the CEO that they I forget what his name is, Ray. Is it John?
Yeah, John Ray.
Is that what it is? He brought him in for bankruptcy. For people who don't know, they brought him in after SBF got booted. And
is he the Enron guy?
He's the Enron guy.
Yeah, the Enron guy.
He's the Enron guy.
Yeah, so he started like the day after like they filed for Chapter 11, I think, or the day before or something like that. Maybe it was the day after.
What was he doing? They just bell him up and then just like, hey man, you're not up to anything, are you? No, I'm just fucking shooting some holes, waiting for another massive corporate scandal.
I think that's it.
And they're just like, right, well, coming off the golf course, motherfucker. We got a real fuck up for you this time.
Business is
like, but I was one day away from retirement. Like, no, mate,
it is
on a golf course for the last fucking 14 years. Fuck. Oh yeah.
Watching this thing, man, it is fucking scary. Like how candid he is about how shit that company was. He's like, he said there's like no corporate structure whatsoever. It's like they don't even have a HR department. They don't have like proper departments for anything. I think the only thing they had was accounting, and obviously they were pretty shit. He said that they were using fucking QuickBooks for their accounting.
They were. Yep.
And there's like all these senators coming and asking all these fucking questions, and he's just like, he keeps saying the same thing. He's like, it's a fucking shit
nothing
show.
Here.
Like,
yeah, there's nothing here.
They're like, what about this? Do you know demographics? And he's like, we don't know anything. It's just a big pile of steaming shit.
Like, there's no records. There's no financial system.
Would you say the principal problem they had, however, was that their corporate structure was a polycule, whereas their corporate structure should have been a DAO, and then they would have had no problems.
A little bit on chain.
They should have been a decentralized autonomous cabal, and they would have been fine.
What about a decentralized autonomous polycule, a DApp?
I don't know what a polycule is, man. You've got to use fucking words I know.
Does somebody want to take that? I mean,
No,
I feel like
I don't know
there are people on the west coast of America here. So
no, I don't know what that one is either.
It's like
cabal.
It's like when you have like polyamory and there's a bunch of people kind of.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I've never heard that term before. How have I not heard that before?
But that's what well, I mean, it's a little bit like nudge, nudge, wink, wink, but that's presumably what was happening in the Bahamas, right?
So
you don't live in one flat when you're billionaires, like just because you like the way each other's taste in movies, you know.
The $8 billion company with only expense is like a $350 monthly QuickBooks Online account.
So Usurper, you said you watched did you watch the whole thing?
I watched most of it until everything got in the way, and it was just him. I watched to the point where he was saying the same thing every time, which was you keep asking these same questions. These are all good questions, but there's no answers here. That's basically what that thing boiled down to.
That is such a great
So-
response. Listen, you've had great ideas, but here's the thing.
That would be a really
I
good
can't
question.
answer anything.
If a business had books I could look at, that would be a really good question. However, I can tell you nothing. We're still figuring it out.
so good.
So the majority of the whole hearing, right, was people grandstanding and fucking people not listening and then asking the same question again in a different way.
Yeah.
But
That's US politics.
But there was like, so there's like pro crypto senators and like just anti-crypto senators, right? And like one of them got up there and he's like, I think he was trying to crack a joke and it was fucking dumb. He's like, I would like to propose like that we rename crypto to like Pudo or something like that.
Yeah, I was like, shut the fuck up, dude.
It was so fucking cringe. It's not funny. And this is in like,
sit down, granddad. You've got a head rush.
Yeah.
This is like, fucking, like a hearing. And he's like, yeah, let's rename it to like Pudo. And everyone's like,
Clearly shit toe.
what? Why are you here, man?
It was
Creepy
good.
dough.
Crap
That's creepy dough.
Crap toe, that's the one.
You're
Creepy
right, though.
dough.
It was creepy dough.
Creepy
You're right
dough.
that it was weird that like how people would get up and like be able to have some sort of take 2 of their minutes on questions and just kind of grandstand around their viewpoint and the whole thing.
People weren't asking questions at all. They were just getting up there and saying their fucking feelings on crypto.
Yeah,
It's like
exactly. You're right. Right. Like just baby bathwater type stuff, right? Like just throw it all out or whatever else. But yeah.
I mean, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'll say, following that, there was Elizabeth Warren came out with a bill, I think today or recently, around how to classify like validators and exchanges. I'll try and find the tweet for it, but basically it went so far as like if you run like a validator operation in the U.S., she wants you essentially to have like a banking license kind of thing, and that's an outstanding take on everything that's going on. Outstanding take.
Not bank. It wasn't bank license. It was a money processor, right? So it basically turns into the same thing as like the corner check cashing things. Is really what it is. Like, meaning you're not custodial. You might hold something in reserve. You might be handling and transacting customer money, she included validators in there even too, like proof of stake, where we're non-custodial validators as like a money processor. Well, that is a shit. That would be the end of this business in the U.S. if that was actually true, because there's I don't know if anybody would actually do that. At least it wouldn't be in the U.S. It would be everywhere else. But
well, and it's so unrealistic.
Awful.
I posted it in the private chat. If you guys want to put that in the public one, I can't put it for some reason. But that's just such a.
Right.
I'm on the outside here, where I actually like a lot of Elizabeth Warren's thoughts on things. Not so much crypto, because that's something that's just kind of pretty far outside of her understanding. But this is just that's a bit much.
Yeah. And what it takes. I mean, this is how this shit goes back 10 years. It's not just the money loss, but now it turns into now we're going to overcorrect for a bunch of 20-year-olds, not able to run a business that could be a $10,000 business, much less a $10 billion business. And then they look at this and say, there's no controls in this type of situation. And what controls can we actually put in place when half of this is offshore? And so how do we protect, quote unquote, the American consumer? And how you do that is you just take a fucking nuke and pave approach to it, right? You don't identify the intricacies of it. You don't try to figure out what the right balance of things is. You just say, well, fuck this. And then we're back 5 years, right? Or more. Then you start backing up because you got to start rebuilding from the very beginning. So that's reason this is like this we were talking about before, like why this FTX collapse is just worse than the people who are actually FTX holders. It just fucking crushes everything.
Well, yeah, and I think that one big aspect of it is he was supposed to be the face of regulation, right? And suddenly the face of regulation with crypto is also some kid that's screwing around. Like that really makes it look bad. Like the guy who wants regulation, doesn't he have an accounting software? Come on now.
Right.
So then what does that mean everyone else is? If he's like one of the best, who's everyone else? Like I have a better system.
Well, it turns out he was a piece of shit. And funnily enough, the person shouting loudly about being a fucking legend turns out to be a fucking prick. Who knew? only
Surprise. Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
only fucking everybody. Like
It's a fucking
everybody
movie.
who's ever paid attention to like the
Right.
banking sector is like charismatic asshole. Well done. Fucking let's get out our bingo card. Charismatic guy says nice things. You know, whatever.
I mean, that
Yeah.
pretty much sums it up, right?
Yeah, but that tweet actually that you linked, like that sums it up for me. Is like somebody who doesn't have like direct experience of crypto proposes a bad or like a knee-jerk way of like regulating, and then all the crypto bros are like surveillance state, and it's like, oh fucking wind your neck in, you dickhead. Like you're already in a surveillance state. Fucking Patriot Act. You're not in a surveillance state because it's on a public fucking blockchain, you absolute fucking rube. Like if you were really like Zcash is not worried about this. Do you know why? Because it's actually fucking secure. It's actually anti-surveillance. I doubt like the Penumbra lads are that well, the Penumbra folks are sorry, my colloquial use of lads in British English.
Way to go
mean
there. Yeah.
Everybody.
Great save. Fantastic save.
I realized I was talking about predominantly American teams, so I had to change from British English to American English to denote the generic, ungendered group of people that work on it. Not lads, but folks. Anyway, I doubt they're that worried about it, right? Because they're building actual anti-surveillance stuff that has a use case that will be used by people. You know, it's kind of back to the stuff that the usurper was saying the other week, which is like. The other problem we have with regulation is at the moment people turn around and say, well, where are the use cases? And we go, fuck, we're still trying to work that out. We're still assembling the airplane on the way down. They're like, yeah, but people are making billions of dollars. You've got to assemble this airplane quicker. And you're like, the problem is SBF is making billions of dollars.
Well, not anymore.
Well, not anymore.
he's in a very small place right now.
He's not in a great place. But
well, and this kind of goes further into like a political discussion, but I mean, that's where lobbying comes from, right? Nobody can be experts of everything. So that's where you get lobbyists come from.
Yep.
And then lobbying, of course, gets bastardized into bribery. It gets turned into Citizens United. It gets turned into all these other things when lobbying itself, I mean, it's actually smart. It's genuinely smart to have experts that you can call on for information. But then obviously those experts are biased. And you want those biased.
Well, also like funding limits and lobbying and all that sort of stuff is a really big problem. And it's one of like the minor but most important scandals of Brexit. Actually, is that we have pretty strict funding caps. Most European countries do during elections, and they were deliberately and illegally broken by funneling money through a shell company in Canada, I think, during the Brexit campaign. May or may not have been Russian money. Who knows? But, you know, it's one of those, again, with these where you're just like, oh, fuck, man. Again, with like SBF, you look at it and you're like, shit, who was he funding as well? Like, because everybody is also like, just, you know, I don't know. Because, again, it makes everybody who, let's say, was funded by him is going to have to now, it will knee jerk against whatever. Because they'll be like, oh, well, no, but we were given a donation, but fuck that guy. Like, and also, by the way, fuck crypto. And you're
Right,
like, and you know, like most things in life, it's not really black and white. Like, fuck some crypto. Yeah. I mean, fucking Shiba Inu coin, fucking 69. Who gives a fuck about that shit coin? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I mean, I probably still even have some Doge knocking around somewhere. Who gives a fuck about Dogecoin, right? But, you know, I don't know. Ugh.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
It's now kind of bad enough where you're like, okay, like we're at a kind of, we're not in a terribly great place for crypto.
Really?
You almost look at like what can we salvage from this era? Because we had like the DAO, then we had like what would be the next massive implosion? Probably the ICO boom and bust.
Oh yeah.
And then now I think this is our most recent absolute fuck up. And it's like, okay, each time there's a massive collapse, we grandfather in something and then abandon a lot of other stuff.
Stable coins in there. Stable coins, algorithmic stable coins. Now this
UST,
exchange,
right?
Well,
UST.
I think
Feels like a long
DeFi
time ago, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think DeFi was the big bull run thing this time. Because in 2017 it was the ICO. And I think DeFi was really the one that brought it in this bull run.
And it was all built off of stable coins.
Yep. Going back to your comment before around John Ray getting the phone call out in the golf course, I had a total flashback of of Harvey Keitel, the wolf, sitting on a bed getting a phone call at like 7:30 in the morning in Pulp Fiction. And like John Ray sitting on the phone with, it's like 7 in the mornings, but he's got a tuxedo on for some reason. He's got his little notebook out and he's going, all right, who are the players? All right, Sam Bankman, what? Okay. Yeah. Fuzzy hair? Yeah. Caroline, what? What's she look like? Oh, okay. I'll be there in 10. It's just a perfect Harvey Keitel situation.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
That's him. It's John just getting in his what was that? It was an Acura. Something. What was that? What car was that? His silver Acura, right? Somebody will know.
Yeah, something like that.
Doing 100 miles an hour.
Oh man, there's going to be a really, isn't it? I read somewhere that the guy who wrote the book that The Big Short is based on was
Michael Burry.
basically shadowing a bunch of people in crypto in anticipation of a hilarious meltdown, and had very recently shadowed Sam Bankman-Fried just before it all went to shit. So
I thought he followed him like 6 months ago, which is just fantastic.
because he'll have written everything down and he'll just be sitting in, but he'll have like given it to the prosecutors and gone, by the way, here's the thing. Anyway, I'm going to go back to my book, which is going to be a bestseller, by the way. I can tell you ahead of time. I'm pretty certain now it's going to be a very big bestseller.
Crazy.
I don't know why you fucking text people and say don't call, they call. It's dumb.
Well, like your boss. Even though it's
Just
working
people.
hours.
Just people.
That's a hell of a
Just
thing for
fucking-
you to say. I'll message you on Discord and you'll be like, all right, I'm calling in 2 minutes. I'm like,
Okay, I don't want to talk to you. That's the reason I messaged you.
Yeah, but if the message was don't call,
okay. For explicitly saying don't call. All right, I
I-
follow. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Now you know for the next time.
like specifically the situation was I rejected a phone call, sent a message that said, I can't talk, I'll call you back after 10 o'clock, to immediate fucking recall. So I don't know. Where did we get to? I was busy taking that.
We
call.
just talked about basically where Rama just got to. In the comments there, Rama said, well, we have no narrative for another bull run right now. And maybe that's okay, right? Because we've had a whole bunch of what would be really interesting is to see the meta of all the various bull runs, because either they're just completely random and it's just random noise, or maybe they're getting worse, or maybe I would imagine they're getting bigger in magnitude, right? But you would hope
bigger in magnitude, but I'd say bigger in like the, well, I mean, not even bigger in the percentage ups and downs. It pretty much goes mad and then nukes. But the, you need a catalyst for a bull run. And this time around, the catalyst was the COVID, because everyone was at home and had nothing to do. So I believe we will be fucked until there's a new catalyst. So,
What was the 2017 catalyst? Or was there?
well, it was probably smart contracts, right?
I don't know.
first kind of
2017?
Yeah, no.
yeah, it was like people just minting random shit coins, wasn't it? That was the ICO,
Well, so at
like ERC20s.
So around I think it was 2015, around there is when like Ethereum started with its, started to implement the smart contract stuff. And then I think it developed to a point until they had, some form of DeFi and NFTs around 2017. And then I think that sort of kicked off like a bit of a fucking hype cycle on that type of business. And then it took off.
That makes sense. And that would make sense for why ICOs became such a big thing in 2017, because they're built off of that platform.
Yeah.
I mean, there's I remember I bought quite a bit of ETH just before or around that time, and it was literally just I sorted, I think, by market cap on one of the thingies at the time. I went, okay, Ethereum, I know what it is. It's programmable stuff. If it's now high in market cap, there we go. Let's buy some of that and see. Just come check back in 3 years. And yeah, panned out all right. But you do go like, and I don't know, we say it before, but until you get to the point where you can't do that, then all this stuff is fucked. Because the kind of return on investment you get on this stuff, like it should be no surprise that it all goes to shit so quickly when it does.
Oh shit, it goes fast, right?
Well, yeah.
The problem with Ponzi-nomics is that it needs new money, and if new money's not coming, then Ponzi-nomics falls off the cliff.
Well, yeah, there are a lot of so obviously I said like the other week, having finally finished a few weeks ago, Noel's recommendation of Graeber's debt book. He has a lot of things to say about I guess the creation of money, because that's kind of what the book's about, right? Which is the move from how you get from credit, like informal credit, to the need for creating money, right? Like token based money. And there's a lot of stuff in there that's quite interesting and quite relevant to, like, it seems like often there's a debt crisis as well involved in the proliferation of new types of money. When people have no way of paying their bills or they can't access money for one reason or another, they quite often make their own. There's this whole bit where he talks about in medieval England, like people just going like, oh, I'm just going to make fad. He calls it fad money, and it's, I'll find the quote. It's good. Hang on.
I mean, that's what you do, right? When everything goes to shit and your money's worth nothing anymore, you just like move to the next thing and then call it money, right? Move from your seashells and pebbles to like, chunks of shiny shit, and then move from your chunks of shiny shit to like stamped out shiny shit, and then decide that you don't want that anymore, and then create paper.
Okay, yeah.
Because you don't need to find the shiny shit to begin with.
So he talks about at the time when there was a bit of the old genocide happening in South America, and they were taking all of the silver, which was like the largest expansion in money supply ever in the history of the world from the point of view of the European and the Western powers, I guess. He says that like the majority of it didn't actually turn up in use, like it wasn't in use, and that was because of like early what we might call globalization, right? A lot of it end up in China for another reason. But so he says that in the poorer neighborhoods of cities or large towns, shopkeepers would issue their own lead, leather, or wooden token money. In the 16th century, this became something of a fad, with artisans and even poor widows producing their own currency as a way to make ends meet. And then there's obviously a couple of footnotes with that citations. But the really interesting thing is like even if you have like there's this idea, like, and he returns to it a lot, this idea that you have this notion that these things are backed by something, but most of the time when you scratch, you find that actually kind of not. And then the destabilizing influence of all these other things is usually part of the macro if you have an unstable situation. And there's also a funny quote further down that same page, which I've underlined, which is, in a typical village, the only people likely to pay cash were passing travelers and those considered riffraff. Because he points out everything was done in that period of the Middle Ages was done largely either using tally sticks or using pure credit. Like you just if you're in a village, like you don't leave the village that often. You get together and you have a reckoning periodically where everybody just settles their debts basically. But there was another. So since we are now into reading sections from David Graeber's book, one of the more interesting. There's a section on I think it's pre-Ming, or is it during the Ming era? It's during the Ming dynasty in China. It's about how unofficial money types were created and then grandfathered into the system. So, okay. there's a complicated thing that involved the tax system as it was not having money in it, right? So you paid in labor and in kind for your taxes, and people couldn't do that because people couldn't do it and they couldn't change their jobs, and it caused civil unrest basically. And civil unrest bad, right?
bad.
So people left where they lived and they went to do random jobs, and one of the things that people ended up doing, aside odd jobs peddling entertainment, piracy, or banditry, he says, in China, many also turned prospector. There was a minor silver rush with illegal mines cropping up everywhere. Uncoined silver ingots instead of official paper money and strings of bronze coins soon became the real money of the off-the-books informal economy. When the government attempted to shut down illegal mines in the 1430s and 1440s, their efforts sparked local insurrections in which miners would make common cause with displaced peasants, seize nearby cities, and sometimes threaten entire provinces. In the end, the government gave up even trying to suppress the informal economy. Instead, they swung the other way entirely. They stopped issuing paper money, legalized the mines, allowed silver bullion to become the recognized currency for large transactions, and even gave private mints the authority to produce strings of cash, which sounds a lot like shitcoins, right? Except that it's shitcoins backed by silver. But the question is like, this is the kind of the interesting paradox at the heart of it, which is that why do people think silver and gold are inherently more worth something? There's a whole section on like alchemists and stuff trying to justify this, and like ancient theories and medieval theories and all this stuff. But it all basically comes down to because, right?
History, right? That's it. That it's been centuries and centuries of us agreeing that that's not us, but of the species agreeing that there's value there, right?
Exactly. It's socially agreed.
Socially agreed.
It's rare.
I mean, we have modern day. Yeah, I would say rarity is a big part of it, but there are modern day things like that as well, right? In prisons, ramen is considered the currency of choice in most prisons.
I thought it was cigarettes.
And then, well, I was going to hit that next. The alternative to that is cigarettes, but that also applies to other areas as well. So going back to my childhood, my group of friends was like the stoners or whatever, right? And that was their currency was cigarettes there as well. But you also find that in other places. Even going back to like World War I, when cigarettes became big, cigarettes became a currency then in wartime, and it basically has never stopped, right? You can look at how cigarettes have become a currency in the Afghan war, in Iraq. Like, it's just something that has become such a strong token of value that it kind of transcends our current vision of money, because it has there's no intrinsic value to it, I guess, aside from like its utilization of like creating social ties. But everyone sees one cigarette as one cigarette, and so how many deck of cards is that worth? What kind of trade can I get out of this? It's actually a pretty interesting like token value, really.
So, Schultze, in Australia, we use beer instead of cigarettes. But I take your point, and yeah,
Isn't
like
that the
what is
premise
it?
of Wake and Fry?
Sort of.
So the funny thing about barter is that something is worth what someone's willing to give for it, right? So a cigarette could be worth, in one instance, a rock, or a cigarette could be worth, in another instance, a Lamborghini. It just depends on the person who's trading for it and how much they want it. So I just want to go back to something that the Frey mentioned previously with his sticks. So in the village, the sticks in the village, that there is, in that book, there are so many parallels to different things in crypto, and actually the sticks are one of them. And I would call that more the town coming together for reconciliation of debt, right? And that draws a parallel to, as what Ben has pointed out here, which is Ko-Fi, which was brought up the other day. Maybe Ben can actually tell us who the developer was on that. But I read about it the other day on after I saw a thread on it on Twitter, and it's virtually the same thing. It's like at some point reconciling your debt between the group of people who have debts together. So basically, I go into debt with the Fray, and the Fray goes into debt with Schulte, but instead of me paying back the Fray, I pay Schulte, and you can reconcile debt as a group, and then you have less transactions. So
Right. But the flip side of that is, and going back to Wake and Fright, because it always comes back to
It,
Wake and
it
Fright.
always does, right?
Notice nobody in Wake and Fright ever asked for a beer to be bought back for them. They just buy beers for other people. And in addition, there's that thing in the same book, which it comes up actually quite often in anthropology, I gather, more generally, which is that if you're part of a community, it's seen as often quite healthy to be generally in debt to the people around you by small tokenistic amounts. Like, even to the extent, if you think about, like, if you know your neighbors well, you'll typically lend them things and they'll lend you things. Like, on my street, we trade hot sauces, for example. I think I've lent some guitar equipment to somebody a few doors down. Like, there are all these little things where you're like, they're just the things that anchor you kind of to a place, and they're not really like, and like beer is a really good example, because it's very, very common to buy a beer and then not count the tab.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
When you're younger, you are always like, you owe me a fucking beer, mate. But then there comes a point when let's say you don't see people as often because you're beginning to get a bit older, or other people have got kids. Again, you don't see them so often. You're not going to count every beer if you manage to see them, because you're just like, oh, this is part of a community ritual, right?
Right.
I think also as you get older, you've accumulated more wealth and you're less like so picky about that beer.
Not in the bear market.
Yeah, not
but generally speaking, like,
count your beers.
You guys can have all my
at the moment
shirts.
we can't count every beer, yeah. But as you get older, like, I think generally speaking, you accumulate more wealth, and then it becomes less of a sticking point if someone owes you a beer.
I don't know if it even is about the wealth necessarily. I think that as you get older, but I want to go back to something that Ferris talked about in a minute. But I think your priorities change when you're young. Like, you don't hold a lot of value towards social interactions, because all day you spend, like, from kindergarten onward, you spend all day with 30 other people minimum, and then you have college or what have you. So social value means very little to you. But as you get older, you're starting to isolate more, whether you want to or not. That's just human nature. And so suddenly, like, who cares about that beer? I get to spend an hour with Jeff or whatever. And then you just enjoy that more.
I think you're right. Wait,
you know Jeff? He's a great guy.
I know. Jeff's fantastic.
I haven't seen him in years.
And I definitely agree with your point with, like, more and more social isolation when you get older. Like, there becomes a point where you just can't be fucked making new friends anymore. And especially if it means, like, going to the local fucking boozer and, like, staying awake and not in bed for a long time. So, you know,
I agree. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and I would say one of the first times in my life that I've ever had the conversation of, like, listen, I think you're cool and everything, but at this time in my life, I'm not really looking for, like, new deep friendships. And I'm about 30, right? And so it's about that time that starts to happen. And I'd never experienced that before. But anyway, let's
go a little bit farther than 30.
A little bit farther than 30?
A little bit farther than 30. 30 is a little bit early. I know exactly what you mean. I'm 50. I know exactly what you're talking about. It does happen. 30, I mean, I have some of my best friends are ones I've met after 30, so don't cut them out at that point.
Well,
look, man, I'm like late 30s, and I really, like, don't like people in general anymore. And
I've always been like that. I mean, that happens.
I like my group of friends that I sort of went to uni with, and you can, like, say anything you want to them as well. Like, you know, you've been friends for so long that if you're having a bad day, you can, like, hose them about some shit, and they just, like, don't care. Yeah. And, like, if you did that to some new person that you knew, I'm sure they'd be a little bit sensitive to that kind of hosing. But in general, also, like, we change our we change our, like our lives change. Like, you're more focused on work and not, like, you know, what Sally and Tom are doing down the road. Like, when you're younger, you're really socially focused because you don't have anything else that's, like, to do. And so, it's all about interpersonal relationships, and you get all tangled up in that drama, right? But once you get older, you've got to work, you've got family, you've got all these other responsibilities and time-consuming things. You just lose time for, you lose time for like, the social things that you used to do. And I think that's a trap as well. And it's a trap of society, and it's a trap of how society needs to function to be like viable. So we need a bunch of low income earners to basically sustain the economy of the world, because they're the machine. If you don't have the machine, then the countries don't run. So the people who are all the way down are battling, and the people who are all the way at the top don't do shit. They just manage their investments. But you need the bulk of people stuck in that middle ground to make the machine work. And so while you're busy toiling away as part of the machine, like, life just passes you by, and you don't really have those social problems anymore because you're too busy running the machine.
Well, I think what's interesting about that is that that's actually kind of a more modern take on society, I guess. I've read a couple books that talk about what it looked like to be, let's say, like a medieval serf. Normally, when you think of the concept of a medieval serf, you think like they're working 12-hour days every day in the fields, they're laboring, blah, blah, blah. But it actually wasn't really like that. They had far more time to be human than we do these days. So it's interesting to look at how isolated and how much time is dedicated to generating capital for ourselves to pay for rent or whatever, when the reality is it's such a modern thing, and we think it's just the way things are supposed to be, and it's really not.
Having to work to live is a modern phenomenon. That's the interesting thing, right? Is that there were points when you could literally work on your own land. There were points until relatively recently where, even in a very, very small country like England, you could live off of common land fully, right? You did not have to have a job. You did not, you had to, there's people who with a pointy stick who will stab you to death if you don't tip your hat. Fine. That's life. But for the most part, you could just go about your fucking business. And like you say, also serfdom, like post the Black Death, like there was a whole period where Europe in particular, like, depopulated by a third. After that, like the idea that somebody could be like, do this, do that, do the other, fucking no chance. Like there were so many, there were like, there's some crazy stat, I don't know, somebody can look this up. There was some point after the Black Death where, certainly in medieval England, a third of the year was feast days, because because the laborers, the agricultural laborers, ran the fucking show. Without them, everybody would starve, and they knew it. So they were like, yeah, all the old pagan festivals, they're back in. These Christian ones, of course, we're having those. Anybody else got any wild ideas for festivals? Because we need a few more days to get the mead out. 2 thumbs up. I mean, what we do now, where we work till exhaustion and then we die, like that's a very recent thing.
And you can you can see the health effects we've had from it. There's a book called Bowling Alone from the 90s about basically how it used to be. If you look back at like the 50s, 60s, people were in bowling clubs. They went and did, pickup games for sports together. There's all those sorts of things. And nowadays we're talking about the isolation epidemic, right? I would argue that a strong part of the 2020 bull run wasn't so much COVID, in the sense of like suddenly we had disposable income because of the checks or whatever. But a lot of it, I think, was everyone got jumbled up in their social system, that a lot of people found community in crypto. And because they found that community in crypto, they could, kind of live the social life that they kind of wanted to. Not exactly, because it's not in person, and there's a discussion we had around that. But there are so many people that are missing community in very fundamental ways that, again, is a modern phenomena. And I think we're going to find out soon kind of how much that's affecting people.
Schultz, I think that kind of feeds in as well as why fucking crypto Twitter is like such a shit show at the moment, because people don't really have another outlet for their frustrations. Like a lot of people can't go down and talk to their friends at the pub about, you know, how they're fucking making losses in crypto or whatever else. And I think that de facto pseudo anonymous part of Twitter makes it like an ideal outlet for people who have no other like social outlet to just fucking let rip and you know, use their frustrations on other people. So I just wanted to apologize as well for like my rant before on the machine. We had some constructive feedback. Rama says deep, Ben Davis says bleak, and Adam Bomb says that's depressing. So just want to apologize for that. And Adam Bomb also keeps saying that, going to say it again, bring back the Jubilee year. I don't know what that means, but sure, man, let's hit it.
It's the conclusion in debt. So Jubilee was debt forgiveness. That's what it meant.
Yes, I do need to reread that.
So it's literally. Luckily for you, I've got it. I've actually got it underlined somewhere. I'm sure I do. Let me find it. Probably the second to last.
I feel like the Fray has like a far better methodology of reading and retaining information in books.
Humanities degree. Like, I'm going to say it again.
Annotating them and other, you know, things like that. It's probably got like little fucking tags hanging out of them everywhere with little notes on them. Whereas I just fold the page. I'm a pleb. The next thing.
Yeah, well, it's just when they're a thing. I also figure, like, especially for something where it's kind of vaguely provocative, I tend to get halfway through, and then I start to realize that I'm missing things. And I start, like, typically mine only start getting annotated after halfway through, when I'm like, there's loads of good stuff that I'm going to forget when I get to the end of this. So I start doing it, but it's But if you ever lend it to somebody or you give it away, then somebody else can it's kind of nice. I always kind of like it when I read a book and I find somebody's maybe not like a novel, but like a text, like, you know, like a kind of vaguely academic.
I actually go for used books specifically for that reason. Portland has Powell's Bookstore, and they have like these great used books. And I specifically will try and find one where someone has annotated, because then you can get like a third party like introspection of what's happening. I think that adds to a book experience.
I really like the books that I've got from there's that really good used bookshop in Berkeley, just down from the university. I've got a few really good books from there, and they've always got somewhat funny, occasionally quite Californian annotations, but you know, you kind of know what I mean. So there's an ending. The ending of the book like is worth. I'm basically just gonna say, okay, so. So
yeah,
just try and find the rational beginning of this quote. Okay, so this is exactly what's so pernicious about the morality of debt, the way that financial imperatives try to reduce us all, despite ourselves, to the equivalent of pillagers, eyeing the world simply for what can be turned into money, and then tell us it's only those who are willing to see the world as pillagers who deserve access to resources required to pursue anything in life other than money, like being on a golf course waiting for the phone to ring. It introduces moral perversions on every level. For example, cancel all student debt. The argument comes, but that would be unfair to all of those people who struggle for years to pay back their student loans. Let me assure the reader that, as somebody who struggled for years to pay back his student loans and finally did so, this argument makes about as much sense as saying it would be unfair to a mugging victim not to mug their neighbors too. The argument might perhaps make some sense if one agreed with the underlying assumption that work is by definition virtuous, since the ultimate measure of humanity's success is as a species in its ability to increase the global output of goods and services by at least 5% per year. The problem is that it's becoming increasingly obvious that if we continue along these lines much longer, we're likely to destroy everything. Side point, as I learned in this book, and I didn't know before, the 5% per year thing comes from the maximum amount of interest you could charge until it was, I think, against Roman Catholic doctrine, after they gave up on the ban on usury in the Middle Ages to accommodate the bankers. So even our idea of GDP is based on like Middle Ages accommodation between the church and moneylenders. Anyway,
that one I didn't know. That's
also the least amount you can charge as commission.
Yep. And so I would like then to end by putting in a good word for the non-industrious poor. At least they aren't hurting anyone. Insofar as the time they are taking off from work is being spent with friends and family, enjoying and caring for those they love, they're probably improving the world more than we acknowledge. Maybe we should think of them as pioneers of a new economic order that would not share our current one's penchant for self-annihilation. The film Office Space, I think, is relevant there. And then he ends with, in this book, I've largely avoided making concrete proposals, but let me end with one. It seems to me that we are long overdue for some kind of a biblical-style jubilee, one which would affect both international debt and consumer debt. It would be salutary not because it would relieve so much genuine human suffering, but because it would also be our way of reminding ourselves that money is not ineffable, that paying one's debts is not the essence of morality, and that all these things are human arrangements. If democracy is to mean anything, it is the ability to agree to arrange things in a different way, which may bring us on to the question of, I put something on Twitter the other day saying, hang on a minute, what if the problem with all this editing the blockchain ledger is actually that we do it outside of consensus? And I know Prop 16, we had a whole thing on this, but maybe actually, because we've been talking about tombstoning, right, for the last few weeks on the show. And it doesn't mean anything. No, it doesn't. Is the problem with untombstoning that we untombstone, or is the problem that we do it outside of consensus? And yes, I do realize that was a handbrake, and then the car has slid, and we are now going in that direction.
Yeah, you gave me no time to reflect on that passage. You're like, all right, here's the passage. And anyway, I feel like I need to recover.
So I think like that end, like that is kind of like throughout the book worked on that, obviously, that ending, like paragraph, because it is leaned on quite a few times, I think, in the book about the, socially sort of coming to the arrangement of deleting the debt. So yeah, look, I'm not going to talk about it because I'm sounding like a peanut. And it also takes me an incredible long time to read books. Like this is my current book that I'm reading with my little hand. And
what book's that?
This is one that it's about cognitive dissonance, and it's mistakes were made, but not by me. So, I don't make mistakes. So it's just about like your mind convincing yourself that you're always right, basically.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's just, it's pretty interesting in that respect. Like, because sometimes that you'd be talking to someone and or you hear statements by someone and they genuinely believe that it's like 100% true, and it's probably because they're a little bit invested in that outcome, or just convince themselves of it, or like flat earthers and stuff like that. It's an interesting book, but I'm not very far through it, as you can see. I've obviously not got to the meat yet, but and I only read when I'm at home. You can tell by how good a condition this is when I'm like not watching fucking Netbook or something, Netflix. So
Netflix.
Yeah, but man, I'm gonna have to go back and reread Debt, because it was actually a couple of years ago that I got that book and read through it, and it took me quite some time to get through because it's very fucking like heavy to understand.
It's a big boy.
It's a thick book, and it's heavy to understand. But like, I remember some of the themes thinking back about it, but I think I really should like get some detail about it. I think maybe like an idea might be that if we are like on this show, I think maybe we should challenge ourselves to maybe read a book like every 4 to 6 weeks or something, so that we can like, at the same time, so that we can actually, have some discourse about it. In saying that, it probably would take.
It might have to be a bit longer than.
Yeah,
Might have to be more like 8 weeks. from
Yeah, I mean, if I've got
Street.
a deadline though, like I can probably, put some more effort into getting through it. If it's just something, I could sacrifice some other shit that I do to actually read the books. It'd be good for me.
True.
I guess it depends how
Well-
busy your bookshelf is, doesn't it?
And
Well,
how
I
far we're
mean,
trying to
if-
get. If we did to do, one book every 8 weeks, I don't think as good a conversation can come out of that as if we do, well, let's do one chapter every 2 weeks or something. I think that's easier because then you can focus in and be like, okay, this chapter's about this. What kind of discourse can we have at?
But the flip side of that,
Yeah, the
though, is
problem-
like in terms of saying something relevant, sometimes you read the whole of Debt, really, and I think there are probably maybe like 10 pull out quotes where I've been like, shit, that says something quite pertinent to our current situation, and there are other ones like the question of like debt crises and like proliferation of money types. That is more of an underlying theme. It's not like there's one particular chapter that talks about it, although it's sort of touched on, so I guess it also depends like what kind of book we're reading. But if you read something like I was going to suggest actually, the other book I read really recently was The World Beyond Your Head. I kind of like read most of the chapters, didn't read the whole thing. By what's his name? Crawford. His name's Crawford. Matthew Crawford, I think. He wrote Shop Class's Soulcraft. I feel like that is a book that would go down well with this group. Shop Class's Soulcraft, that is.
That one's very good.
I've not read it yet. I've read this one, and I've read an article by him, which I think came before the book, but I haven't read Shopcraft the Soulcraft yet, so I was going to read that. But if you've already read it, sure, see then. Was it good?
So
Do you know what?
I read it in high school though, so we're talking like
Last
I'm a
week.
totally different person then. Yeah, exactly.
Last
I'm a different person then, so like I could totally read it again and just get all new stuff. Similarly with what's the one? The one where the guy
Zen in the Art of
for the Soul. Zen in the Art of Motorcycle.
Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what could be fun is reading something like just off the wall, like the Metamorphosis.
Eat,
and,
Pray,
like,
Love.
try-
Oh.
and like trying to make like
Our
as a
heads
group,
are in
trying to
different
make-
places.
because Metamorphosis is like a bunch of short stories, right? So it's easy to get through, and then like trying to fucking make sense of it as a with our group consensus.
What, Kafka?
Yeah.
Well, we could just go the whole way and just do House of Leaves, and we can all do our interpretation of what actually happened.
Perfect.
Sorry, I missed some of that because of fucking Elon.
Fucking Elon.
Oh, I suggested like a very postmodern book called House of Leaves, where it's a book within a book.
Oh, that sounds fun.
It was kind of a joke, but
We could go
but
the
hey.
other way and do the Canterbury Tales.
I have to do that. I have to do those at school. That's not cool. Well, yeah, the Canterbury Tales. My summary would be that almost always the punchline is about pooping asses or penises.
I was
That-
gonna say
that
about like
all-
sex or something like that. Yeah.
My kids would love it.
It's all about asses. I read a really good book called Watling Street, which is basically a folk history of England told by walking one of the oldest roads. That's goes back to pre-recorded history, basically. But it's sort of told out of order, and there's a lot of them relate back to the Canterbury Tales, and the conclusion is almost all of them involve a joke about an arse at some point, and you're just like, the author reflects that, like, basically, no matter what period of English history you use, we're just obsessed with telling jokes about arses, and maybe every country is, and that's what makes us human. And then that's like his aside, and then he just moves on and be like, then there was a cathedral or whatever, and you're like, this book's great.
Should we go back to Tombstone?
So, Adam Bomb says, "How about a choose your own adventure book?"
That's more like it. If you'd like to unbond now, flip to page 89. If you want,
Yeah,
if
we
you
could
wanna
all
piss off,
discuss where you ended up. Discuss your adventure.
if you want to piss off your delegators through a nasty tweet storm, go to 76.
Yeah,
I can turn back to untombstoning. I'm good for that.
Should we finish up on Tombstone?
Yeah, sure, man. Well, we've got 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
We've also been recommended a book called Flatland in the
Yeah, I didn't know that book.
comments, which, given that Ben has also doxed his dad as an English literature professor, we can assume that the Flatland in question is a satirical novella by the English schoolmaster Edwin Abbott Abbott, an amazing name, published in 1884 by Seeley & Co. of London, written anonymously by A. Square. The book used the fictional two-dimensional world of Flatland to comment on the hierarchy of Victorian culture. I've not heard of it, nor have I read it. It sounds
like a real head nodder.
Do you know what it straight away made me think of what's the name of the second book by Susanna Clarke, Piranesi, where it's like, which also Piranesi is very, very similar to House of Leaves. So as soon as novelists start having a nervous breakdown, they start writing books about labyrinths, right? That's what novelists seem to do. Very talented, esoteric novelists. They have a breakdown, they write a story about a labyrinth. And it's like, oh, is it a metaphor for the author's own struggle to get the book out? Yes.
So, what do we think about well, firstly, so butthurt influences, do you think that was sort of covered off in Prop 89 or?
In our notes, yes.
Yeah, we'll put a line through that. So, what?
Phrase on, he's lost his camera.
Yeah, okay. So untombstoning. So it's been a trend of late that people who have, let's say, accidentally tombstone themselves, that the network is making more or less special provision to like bring these people back and untombstone them. So I guess that, that is like it, and they're doing it as the phrase sort of mentioned before in his tweet. They're more or less doing it outside of consensus as well. Maybe a social consensus among validators as people who, and actually, now that I think about it, that's not actually true because people have to vote in the upgrade. They're not doing it outside of an upgrade. So 9 times out of 10, these untombstonings are part of an upgrade. So I guess people technically are voting for it.
They are, but I don't know. It's not as clear as if it was 2 separate props, right? Like it is part of an upgrade, and people usually vote yes on upgrades and kind of move along. But if it was,
you can shoot down the prop and say no, take that fucking tombstoning out of it, and then we'll,
of course you could
vote.
Yeah.
I think that's a fun discussion to be had in itself, right? Like, I think it was the Chihuahua one. I voted yes because it was an upgrade, and I didn't realize that there's an untombstone in it. And I'm sure that is true for many other people, right? Like, how often are we voting yes on these props where it turns out we're literally undoing potentially nefarious behavior? I think that's fascinating. I'll admit I was kind of ashamed whenever that came through, and I was like, oh shit, that's something I should have caught and had a discussion about. And I learned, when the upgrade went through, that now we have a validator back because this was in the upgrade handler that I didn't review.
Right. Yeah. I kind of think, our viewpoint overall, are we kind of in favor of this idea of being able to back out and whether even if it's through a halt or a mistake from a validator's perspective that's away from an actual halt? Halts actually increase the risk of tombstoning just based on people not understanding the whole stack and taking steps faster than they should, or doing things that they don't understand, or following bad directions in Discord. Like things like that happen, right? Like those are situations that happen, and people just copy paste commands, and next thing you know that they're tombstone after the chain moves a block or something similar to that. That's one situation. The other situation is people just fuck up. Like people, they run commands and don't understand the whole stack and doing something on their own.
That usurper, that we are sort of taking in good faith that they've fucked up and not tried to do something nefarious, like you say.
Fair enough. Yep. Fair enough. Yep. That's true. Like, and I don't know what, in a single validator double signing, I'm not sure what nefarious structure would be there so much, based on percentages that we're talking about. But yeah, usually I would think that it's probably just a fuck up. So, but is there leeway in any of those situations? Is it worth having leeway? And if there is leeway, like in these type of situations, like then what responsibility do validators have, and what's the point of all this shit then?
Well, and
So-
there are rules that apply to only a handful of folks, right? Everstake, I think it was Everstake, Tombstone twice on Evmos, and there was no consideration to bring them back up. But then
Right.
there have been other validators that, because they were small, they're like, well, we should bring them back up.
Right.
So how is this even applying?
Like they tried. Yeah.
So Rama says, is the devs gave wrong instructions sufficient justification? Vals should review the notes and only run verified shit. So there are some situations like in upgrades where things go terribly awry. And they may be situations that validators haven't, like, unless you're pretty experienced in it. And I think we as a group have probably bumped up against the issues that people are getting tombstoned for more or less in test nets. And so, you know, if you're a more inexperienced validator, you might not know that these things that you're doing are going to result in a tombstone, whereas the rest of us already know because we've done it in test nets.
Yeah.
But I think that comes down to still, like, you know, validator experience, the competence of the operator. And like we've talked about before as well, like actually having playbooks with how to deal with situations. And I think most of us, if not all of us here, specifically run remote signers for that very issue of double signing during upgrades, which is
Because it will literally say in the log, yo, I tried to double sign. I'm not doing anything right now, but I like, well, TMKMS will specifically say attempted double sign. That
yeah,
it's caught.
Horcrux
Tells
does
you
the
in the
same
log.
thing. Attempted double sign, attempted double sign, attempted double sign. I won't do that because I'm a good softwares. But yeah, if you run local signing material, it is like really fucking pertinent to really know what you're doing when it's an upgrade and it goes to shit. The best thing you can do if you're not sure is just turn your fucking machine off and wait for other people to get the network going.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, also the copy pasting does come into it, sir, because a lot of people copy paste their way into actually running a fucking validator to begin with, and they just blindly take orders from the devs and they say, do this, and people go copy pasta, boom, double sign, fuck.
Yeah, and it's not just devs. Like, yeah, I mean, you get bad advice in those channels from all sorts of different types of validators, even very large validators that might have somebody who doesn't necessarily, or just pasting something that might work for them because of a certain reason, but doesn't necessarily apply to all individuals. But it's not just devs. And sometimes, I mean, that happens as well. Like project devs might not really understand the intricacies of how the signing process works and just like, oh, we're just going to make this and this and this. And like, no, like you're changing the state and you're wiping the state file out and you've signed. And so like just not understanding that structure of it, because that's not really the dev side, that's the chain side, right?
The validator state file, I think, is often understood. The fact that in the way the consensus rounds work, it is an important part of consensus. And if you just fucking nuke that guy,
right,
you're going to double sign.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that a lot of inexperienced validators assume, and I certainly did before, maybe as late as the Lucina. I don't know. It would have been around or before the Juno launch. I guess was probably the time when it finally clicked for me, because I understood that there were, you know, what the polka was, polka, the John Candy. Was it Home Alone?
No, that was
King.
Oh yeah, it was Home Alone. You're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
Polka King of the Midwest. But yeah, the polka that happens in Tendermint, the consensus rounds, is called a polka. Sorry, for those who don't know, in the Tendermint consensus rounds, they happen until there's a valid block agreed upon, right? And they time out very quickly when they're kind of running. Each one of them is called a polka. And so I'm not just saying polka because I'm insane. I am insane, but I'm also saying polka, but I'm saying polka for a good reason. Anyway, polka. I understood the polka, but I didn't understand clearly enough the role that played in double signing, right? Because I thought until the block was agreed, you couldn't double sign. It had to be a malicious, basically like no, this is the block, and obviously that's not blah 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 with the same key matter, which is obviously very, very hard to do. Actually, when you stop and think about it, you're like, oh, well, the much more common malicious action is actually to interrupt and try and rewrite the state of the consensus rounds, right? Which is why you double sign in that scenario. That's exactly why you double sign, because the other attack vectors open to you involve complicated cryptographic manipulation that may or may not even be possible. Where it's just like going, oh yeah, you guys will say it's round 300. Well, I say it's round 0, and I have some different transactions.
Right.
That's like, yeah, it's kind of obvious in hindsight. In like, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it was obvious in hindsight why we double signed. But yeah, I mean, those things are documented, but again, it's all kind of like there's a lot of things to learn in Cosmos. So I don't even think it's just that inexperienced validators, insofar as it cannot be their fault, like I at least understand that there is a lot to learn about this stuff. And I think it takes time for a lot of this stuff to sink in, like familiarity and all of that.
I mean, if there's no consequences towards it, then I just don't understand what the motivation is to understand it and to spend the time to, and understanding that means that you're becoming an expert in that craft. And there's a craft here. There's a craft in terms of understanding it and being able to run high availability and, architectures. And there's a lot here. It's not just fucking a Hetzner box and $100 a month. Right. So if you're going to spend the time to do that, then I think that should be rewarded. And the reward for that is by people who don't spend the time doing that, getting tombstone and getting kicked the fuck out. And then they should not be allowed to come back in. And there's roles for new people. They either get tombstone and kick the fuck out, or the ones that continue to be able to not find themselves stepping on their own, whatever allows them to be able to move up the set. So if you're not going to enforce the rule, why have a fucking rule, right? Regardless of the structure of it, right? So
yeah, exactly right. Like Near, for example, they don't take issue with double signing. They handle it instead by if you're running like two validators, it's legitimate to run like two full validators at the same time of your same validator, and then only one will sign. And if the other one signs, then the other one just kind of
it's great
moseys along.
Right.
And I don't think that that's a huge issue. But if we're making this big claim that tombstoning double signing results in all these consequences, then we should enforce the consequences rather than spending dev time undoing said consequences. Or
totally agree.
I think that you can actually disable double signing consequences. I think Akash actually has, I think Akash has it disabled. Fine. If we're not going to go by the consequences, then let's just not have it.
But just vote on it for fuck's sake. Like, don't just turn it off.
Exactly. Like make it part of the protocol. Don't just give everybody a fucking freebie on it. Here's my thought on this. Don't fucking rug me. Here's an idea what we could do. Like, I think there's two issues here. One is this tombstone thing. The other thing we've talked about in this show in the past has been around like self-bonding or validators just quote unquote dumping or just dumping all this type of thing. I kind of think that the tombstone, the slash should only come off the val, not off the stakers. So my changes in this, Rama, take notes. This is what I would do. I would make it where the slash comes off the validator, not the stakers. It would be on the percentage. So if it's 5% or 10% of the total amount staked, and then that means the validator has to have the self bond to match that percentage. And that controls our VP. So meaning like if I have 100,000 staked, I got to have 5,000 that's self guaranteed on the validator. That is my slash protection. And so all this bullshit around like soft slash protected and hard slash protected, which is total fucking horseshit 90% of the time, all that goes away because you can't actually stake to that validator unless they have the internal stake to be able to allow more stake on top of that. Now that might totally fuck up the set.
And then Usurper lifts the mask and Senator Warren is under
that's a good plan. I like that plan because the idea would be maybe the percentages aren't 1-to-1. Maybe it's not exactly 5% or it's a percentage of that percent or something similar to that. And maybe it's not 100% goes to the val. Maybe it's 50-50 or it's 2.5% from all the delegators and 2.5% from the validator. But you could figure out a percentage that says that we want to be able to see some self-delegation from the validator itself. We want to have some skin in the game in that structure. We want to have the validator actually have some ownership of that, meaning like if they do get slashed, most of the time, if they get slashed, it means nothing to them because they have nothing on the fucking validator. So like they're not staked and maybe they're staked individually or they're selling all that off. So like Does it actually hurt them? In some of these cases, I'm guessing it hurts them at zero at all, like at all. All right, it just hurts the
I
delegates,
kind
not
of
the
fuck, man.
actual
I
validator.
really like that idea. That is a fucking.
There's
got to
be a way in there to be able to put the
I like it
onus
too.
on the validator. Number one. Number two, force some self stake so they have some fucking skin in the game. And if they double sign, then they lose their own shit. It's not a delegator problem. This is an operator problem. And so what we actually have is the delegators get hurt in this situation, not the validator, because most of the time they have very little self stake involved. They might have their own wallets on them. I'm not bad mouthing that, like we do as well, and all that kind of stuff. And there might be some in there, but maybe some of those, maybe on some chains they sell 100% of that off. So they might be sitting in number 10, but they have nothing in the validator and they're nothing in personal wallets because they IBC it all off. Which means if they double sign, they have who gives a shit? Put me back in, right? Because they've already made that money. So there's got to be something in here because this model right now I think is totally broken.
So Usurper, I tend to agree with Ben Davis. He says, I was going to say 50-50, everyone should have skin in the game. And
yeah,
I believe that as well.
Possible.
Like,
yeah,
I think you could have a mix of what you're saying as well as what is already in place, in that delegators need to get slashed so they learn their lesson, right? Don't fucking do research. Don't delegate to shit validators. But also,
yeah,
I think that you could greatly increase the liability of the validator, and I think that is a great way to make sure that they have self-stake in blocking delegation, unless they have enough skin in the game to be slashed for any misconduct.
And if somebody's in the top 10, they should have enough self-stake because they're showing that they are dedicated to that chain. Right. And I understand, I get the whole idea around like having personal wallets and all that kind of shit. I understand some of that. At the same point,
perfect.
At the same point, there's plenty of ways, like we do the same thing. We got a fucking box of fucking ledgers here. You can have validators on hardware wallets. There's safe ways to be able to run that. There's no reason it couldn't sit on a centralized wallet as well. So I think there's something here that maybe we can dig more into, because it just seems like it's really broken now. And right now, I don't think there's any motivation for there's no motivation for the validators not to double sign. Like it's public humiliation, and they get called out, and the Fray gets to roll his tombstone video and all that kind of stuff. Like that's like literally, I think this is the hardest hitting double signs. Is this it? Is there any other like mass, maybe Twitter and this? I don't know if that's it. That the only place that people get called out for the fucking tombstone. I don't know if that's it. Might be it. Yeah. Probably. So like it doesn't seem like there's just enough. There's not a like if it's gonna be a rule, we want to have some structure around it, then we should do that.
So I think Usurper, your idea is a really interesting one. I guess I think it's also interesting and scary because you go, well, any regulation that comes down will be focused on proof of stake from the point of view of Ethereum. And then we're going to end up with being in the weird position as Cosmos validators where every chain can set its own rules, which they already can, obviously. But it's going to be increasingly interesting to operate as a proof of stake validator as things sort of shift. As I've always said, the second regulators work out, wait, the fuck, you can just fucking rewrite the history.
Yeah.
What? They're going to just fucking come down like a ton of bricks on every validator, and proof of stake is fucking dead. But my actual thought, the one that I think is more pertinent to this, is like, as various folks have said in the chat, as we were talking about with Akash, as Rama said, Som has 0 slashing. Do we actually think slashing is even necessary at this point? Like, as in downtime slashing? Yeah, we should have that. That makes sense. But the slashing for the double sign, the reality is these are not coming from attacks. They are coming from
incompetence,
almost always incompetence or upgrade failures that result in a double sign. And we're all validated. Most of us are validating networks where there are no consequence for a double sign. A valid block is minted and the chain moves on.
Yeah.
So because double sign is actually not all that related to double spend. It's a penalty for submitting evidence that is wrong from the point of view of consensus. But
Well,
consensus keeps going on because consensus has already got the 67% in order to say that you were wrong.
Right. And so what's the point of slashing for a mistake rather than, like, arguably our most important thing we should be doing is keeping uptime, right? Now I'm of the dissenting opinion that I think anything above, let's say, like 80 or 90%, that's plenty. It's not like you lose any sort of staking rewards for missing a block. You don't. We've shown that. So as long as you're keeping the chain going, then we can miss, 10% of blocks or whatever. Fine. Why is a mistake punished more heavily than like what our actual job is supposed to be?